Mary Ziegler, tell you what.
Good afternoon. Just so you know, my connection with Asbury Park, I grew up in Wall Township, and as a child in the 60s, I came into Asbury Park with my mom all the time. We used to go to Steinbach's, eat in the restaurant there, Learners, got my school shoes at Tom McCann's. And once a year in the summer, we'd come to Asbury because we didn't have a lot of money. And our big summer event would be coming to the Boardwalk, going to see a movie. I remember Sound of Music the one year, and going to the Criterion for candy. And then, years later, I worked at the Asbury Park Press in downtown Asbury, and I saw the other side of Asbury Park, and it had fallen on harder times. And in the early 80s, the downtown, Steinbach's was shuttered. There weren't many stores. It was a totally different picture. So it's great to see Asbury, rising up and seeing it doing so well now, and I'm sure you're all happy about that too. So that's my connection. Today, really, it's a tale of two men today. James Bradley, who was a staunch Methodist, and Clarence Hetrick, who represents the more freewheeling era of the 20s and beyond. Now, James Bradley, the founder of Asbury Park, would have turned over in his grave if he knew that there was a Bradley Liquors in Bradley Beach, because he was a staunch Methodist prohibitionist. And there's a lot of controversy over Bradley. Was he a forward-thinking visionary, or was he more of a narrow-minded reactionary? He was a very complex man. Ironically, Bradley was born in a tavern in Staten Island in 1830. His father was Adam Bradley, who was an Irish-born Catholic farmer. His mother was Hannah, an English Protestant. And no doubt the fact that his father was an alcoholic and died of alcoholism really colored his attitudes towards drinking. Now, Bradley was a very ambitious man, and he was very successful. He worked his way up as a brush manufacturer, and he made a lot of money. However, the work took its toll on him, and in 1869, he suffered from what was then called nervous exhaustion. It was probably a severe case of depression. And a friend of his suggested he come down and check out Ocean Grove, which at that time was a religious retreat, and this area was really pretty much a vast wilderness, so there wasn't much going on here, but Ocean Grove was this little burgeoning enclave. Bradley came down and he loved Ocean Grove, and he decided that he was going to invest in Ocean Grove. But he also saw another opportunity. He saw that here, where we are now, which was nothing, beaches, undergrowth, trees, had a great opportunity to create into a resort for the middle class, the Protestant middle class, a respectable, family-oriented resort. Something in the middle between Ocean Grove and Long Branch, which was Sin City at the time. There wasn't too much between Ocean Grove and Long Branch, but they were very contrasting. Ocean Grove was this very staunch religious bastion, and Long Branch was much like, if you watch Boardwalk Empire, just to take it back several decades, was a place of gambling, prostitution, freewheeling money, so very much a contrast. So Bradley set out to make Asbury Park the kind of resort that would appeal to families. He paid $90,000 for 500 acres. And within several years, the resort sprang up. It happened very quickly. Within several years after he purchased it, there were about 3,000 year-round residents, boarding houses, hotels, residents, churches. It was a thriving community. It all happened very quickly, almost like a frontier town. Within a few years, 50,000 people were already coming down every summer. As the resort grew rapidly, however, Bradley realized that there were some threats to his vision of a safe little middle-class enclave, one of them being Demon Rum. Now, it was illegal to sell liquor in Asbury, but private possession was allowed. I couldn't buy it in Asbury, but I could have it, according to the law. So, this spawned the Beer Ark. The Beer Ark was a horse-drawn wagon that would bring in beer, and it was called the Beer Ark after Noah's Ark, because much like the Ark saved Noah and his family from destruction, the Beer Ark, I guess, saved people from the misery of being sober, and they could enjoy an alcoholic drink. The Beer Arks, if I were an owner of a boarding house in Asbury or a resident, if I bought my beer from the Beer Ark in another town, then they could come in and bring it to me. I had already paid for it. That was how it was supposed to work. But it didn't quite work that way, because people like you or I could just go up to the Beer Ark when they came into town and buy beer. And that's what was going on. pretty much they'd sell to anyone who would approach them. Bradley was not very successful in fighting this. In fact, by 1891, a news article noted, "Founder worsted by beermen." And the article noted that enormous quantities of beer were being sold in Asbury Park and Ocean Grove. Now, besides the beer art, there were an early form of speakeasies in Asbury Park. In fact, at a Kingsley Avenue establishment, it was noted in 1895, you could go in and ask for seafoam, and you'd get a big schooner of beer. You could ask for cold tea, and you would get a stiff shot of whiskey. And a lot of hotels, billiard halls, and other establishments were doing this. So the beer and wine and whatever other booze you could think of was flowing pretty freely. There was even some action down at the local freight depot, where Joe Patterson, who was the son of a New Jersey assemblyman, turned the depot into a, quote, beer guzzling station, because he and his friends would have wild parties with beer down there. Even the local pharmacies got into the act, administering medicinal alcohol. There were two brothers, a pharmacist, Daniel Eustace, and his doctor brother, who dispensed alcohol to customers, and the prescription would say, a pint of whiskey to be taken as directed. Okay? Bradley did pursue them, and eventually a Monmouth County grand jury indicted him, so he did have a few victories in his fight. Just a side note, Bradley also had a keen eye for watching the young people, make sure there was no hanky-panky in his town, and he frowned on any spooning, as they called it back in the day, and he even had city police patrolling Deal Lake with lights to make sure that people who were out on their boats weren't doing anything they shouldn't do. Despite his frustrations, we don't want to paint Bradley just as this kind of crank who, was ineffectual in trying to stop the flow of alcohol. He did many, many things for Asbury Park. He did create a family-friendly resort. He was excellent at creating huge events that would draw people in. One of them was the Wheelmen. There was a bicycling craze in the 1890s, and it was considered a coup to get the Wheelmen convention in Asbury Park. It was a cycling competition, and they did secure that in 1895. And that was the kind of thing that would have gotten national attention. And of course, a baby parade, which became a huge publicity event for the town. But as times changed, so did an effort to get Bradley out of office. As the 1900s approached, it was a new generation purchased. And they were tired of the fact that the boardwalk reflected an older era. By 1900, there was a new vision for Asbury. There was a thought that they wanted to get rid of all the old buildings along here and build all new ones. Bradley had a habit of putting throughout the city these crazy little artifacts he collected, like a carriage here and some other object there, and they wanted to clean everything up. So by 1903, Bradley was a worn man, and he sold the beachfront to the city. And that was pretty much the end of the era for Bradley and his efforts to halt the flow of liquor in Asbury Park. Now we have a few photos I'll show you before we begin with Joe's presentation. Okay, that's the cover of our book. Now this is a typical Bradley curiosity on the boardwalk, right, John?
Yeah, this is, his curiosities included used lion cages from the zoo, but this was put up in the 1890s, an old carriage that tells you, look, this is how you used to have to get here, and that was his idea of attraction.
So obviously the newer group emergence looked kind of junky, and I wanted to get rid of all of that. Go to the next one. This is the West End Hotel. It's like a 1900, right, John?
Yeah.
Okay, one of the many, many glittering hotels that line the oceanfront in Asbury. Okay, the next shot is going to be Madison Avenue, circa 1900, looking east. Our next shot is going to be the Moorish Maze, a boardwalk attraction, family-friendly, circa 1900. The next shot is next door to the Moorish Maze. More adult entertainment was available elsewhere in town, as in Kingsley. Okay, this is Kingsley Street, 1895, this is where you find, where if you said seafoam, you might get a nice big glass of beer in this area. Okay, now a closer look here shows There's a welcome wheelman sign there. You might not see that, but that shows that was 1895 when the convention was a huge event for Asbury Park. The wheelmen, cyclists from around the country came to Asbury Park. Our next shot is Cookman Avenue, circa 1900. Close-up view of Cookman, same era. And our last shot is down by the Boardwalk, circa 1910. Just give you an idea of Brownlee's era and a little bit after Brownlee's era. And now, Joe, you're going to pick it up.
Okay.